Your soulmate's marriage confession left people speechless. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because something unforgettable happened. Something nobody planned for. Something nobody expected. Something that completely changed the atmosphere in the room. And listen to this. It began like any ordinary gathering. People were talking, laughing, sharing stories, discussing everyday life. The room felt warm, comfortable, familiar. Nobody expected the evening to become memorable. Nobody expected a life-changing confession. Nobody expected a moment that would stay in their minds long after the night ended. Because your heart needs this right now, because the most important moments in life often arrive without warning. Your soulmate was about to create one of those moments. And listen to this. For most of the evening, they remained quiet. Not unusually quiet. Just thoughtful. Observant. Reflective. Occasionally smiling. Occasionally laughing. Participating in conversations like everyone else. Yet deep inside, something was happening. A decision was forming. A truth was waiting. A realization was preparing to be spoken aloud. Because your heart needs this right now, because some truths remain inside us until the exact moment we're ready to share them. Your soulmate had reached that moment. And listen to this. As the evening continued, conversations shifted from ordinary topics to deeper ones. People began discussing life, relationships, dreams, regrets, future plans. The kinds of conversations that appear when people become comfortable enough to be honest. And with every passing minute, your soulmate felt something growing stronger. The desire to speak. The desire to share. The desire to finally express something that had been living quietly inside their heart. Because your heart needs this right now, because honesty becomes difficult to ignore once it is ready to be expressed. Your soulmate could no longer ignore it. And listen to this. At first, they hesitated. Not because they were afraid. Because they understood the weight of what they wanted to say. Words matter. Especially honest words. Especially words that come directly from the heart. Especially words spoken in front of people who truly listen. And your soulmate knew that once these words were spoken, they could never be taken back. Because your heart needs this right now, because genuine honesty always requires courage. Your soulmate was gathering that courage. And listen to this. The room continued buzzing with conversation. Yet somehow everything began feeling quieter. Not externally. Internally. Almost as though time itself was slowing down. Almost as though the moment was preparing itself. Almost as though life was creating space for something important. And then it happened. Your soulmate stood up. Not dramatically. Not suddenly. Calmly. Deliberately. Naturally. Yet the simple act of standing immediately captured attention. People stopped talking. People looked up. People became curious. Because your heart needs this right now, because people instinctively recognize when something meaningful is about to happen. Everyone felt it. And listen to this. The room gradually became silent. Not completely silent, but noticeably quieter. Enough for everyone to notice. Enough for everyone to pay attention. Enough for anticipation to begin building. Nobody knew what was coming. Nobody knew why they had stood up. Nobody knew what they were about to hear. Yet somehow everyone knew it mattered. Because your heart needs this right now, because authenticity carries a presence that people naturally feel. Your soulmate carried that presence. And listen to this. For a few moments, they simply stood there. Looking around the room. Taking a breath. Collecting their thoughts. Preparing themselves. And during those few seconds, curiosity spread through the room. Questions filled people's minds. What were they about to say? Why did this feel important? Why did everything suddenly feel different? The anticipation became impossible to ignore. Because your heart needs this right now, because anticipation often appears before meaningful revelations. Everyone could feel it. And listen to this. Then your soulmate finally began speaking. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just honestly. The first words were simple. Yet they immediately captured everyone's attention. They said, "I've spent a long time thinking about what truly matters in life." The room became even quieter. People leaned forward. People listened carefully. People sensed that something significant was unfolding. Because your heart needs this right now, because simple truths often carry extraordinary power. Your soulmate was speaking from truth. And listen to this. They continued. Sharing reflections. Sharing lessons. Sharing experiences. Not stories designed to impress people. Not dramatic memories. Real experiences. Real growth. Real understanding. And with every sentence, something remarkable happened. People stopped merely listening. They started reflecting. Reflecting on their own lives. Their own choices. Their own relationships. Their own journeys. Because your heart needs this right now, because genuine honesty inspires self-reflection in others. Your soulmate's honesty was doing exactly that. And listen to this. As they spoke, another realization emerged. The confession wasn't really about marriage. Not entirely. It was about understanding. Understanding what makes commitments meaningful. Understanding what creates lasting trust. Understanding what transforms ordinary connections into extraordinary ones. And suddenly everyone understood why this conversation felt different. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful commitments begin long before promises are ever spoken. Your soulmate had learned that lesson. And listen to this. The more they shared, the more emotional the atmosphere became. Not sad. Not dramatic. Meaningful. The kind of meaningful silence that appears when people hear something real. The kind of silence that appears when people recognize truth. The kind of silence that appears when words reach deeper than expected. And every person in the room felt it. Because your heart needs this right now, because truth resonates in ways ordinary conversations cannot. Your soulmate's words were resonating deeply. And listen to this. As they approached the most important part of the confession, the room felt completely still. Every conversation had stopped. Every distraction had disappeared. Every person was paying attention. Waiting. Listening. Wondering what would come next. And your soulmate knew the next words would change everything. Because they were finally ready to reveal the lesson that had taken years to learn. The lesson that had reshaped their understanding of commitment. The lesson that had transformed the way they viewed relationships. The lesson that had quietly changed their life. And for the first time in a very long while, they felt completely ready to speak it aloud. Because your heart needs this right now, because some truths only reveal their full power when they are finally shared. Your soulmate was about to share one. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after your soulmate stood up and captured everyone's attention, the room became so quiet that even the smallest sound seemed louder than usual. Nobody interrupted. Nobody looked away. Nobody checked their phone. Every eye remained focused on them. Because something about the moment felt different. Something about the atmosphere felt important. And listen to this. Your soulmate took another deep breath. Not because they forgot what they wanted to say. Because they wanted every word to come from the heart. Not rehearsed. Not polished. Not perfect. Just honest. Because your heart needs this right now, because honesty creates connections that perfection never can. Your soulmate understood that. And listen to this. For years, they had watched people talk about relationships. They had listened to conversations about love. They had heard countless opinions about commitment. Some people described it as luck. Some people described it as destiny. Some people described it as sacrifice. Some people described it as hard work. Yet recently, they had discovered something surprising. Something much deeper than any simple explanation. And that discovery was what they were finally ready to share. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful lessons often arrive through experience rather than theory. Your soulmate had learned through experience. And listen to this. The room remained completely still. Then they spoke. Slowly. Carefully. Sincerely. They said, I used to think commitment was about finding certainty. I used to think it was about having every answer. I used to think it was about knowing exactly what the future would look like. The room listened closely. People nodded quietly. Many recognized themselves in those words. Because almost everyone has searched for certainty at some point. Almost everyone has wanted guarantees. Almost everyone has wished the future came with instructions. Because your heart needs this right now, because uncertainty is something every person eventually faces. Your soulmate had faced it too. And listen to this. After a brief pause, they continued. But life taught me something different. The strongest commitments are not built on certainty. They are built on trust. The words seemed to settle over the entire room. People exchanged thoughtful glances. Some smiled. Some reflected silently. Some appeared emotional. Because the statement felt true. Simple. Yet powerful. Because your heart needs this right now, because trust often matters more than certainty. Your soulmate had finally understood that lesson. And listen to this. The confession continued. Not with dramatic stories. Not with shocking revelations. With wisdom. With reflection. With understanding earned through experience. Your soulmate explained how life rarely follows perfect plans. How people change. How circumstances change. How unexpected challenges appear. And how real commitment is tested during those moments. Not during easy times. During difficult times. Because your heart needs this right now, because true character reveals itself during challenges. Your soulmate had learned that firsthand. And listen to this. The more they spoke, the more thoughtful the room became. People weren't simply listening anymore. They were reflecting. Thinking about their own journeys. Their own promises. Their own relationships. Their own growth. Because genuine honesty has a way of encouraging self-reflection. And your soulmate's honesty was impossible to ignore. And listen to this. Then came another statement. A statement that immediately captured everyone's attention. Your soulmate said, "The greatest mistake people make is believing commitment means never facing doubts. Real commitment means choosing trust even when uncertainty exists." The room became even quieter. Because those words challenged common assumptions. Many people spend years waiting for perfect certainty. Waiting for fear to disappear. Waiting for every question to be answered. Yet life rarely works that way. Because your heart needs this right now, because courage often comes before certainty. Your soulmate had discovered that truth. And listen to this. As they continued speaking, they shared lessons about patience. Lessons about communication. Lessons about understanding. Not because they wanted to teach anyone. Because they wanted to share what life had taught them. The lessons were simple. Yet meaningful. Every meaningful connection requires effort. Every meaningful connection requires honesty. Every meaningful connection requires growth. And growth never truly stops. Because your heart needs this right now, because the strongest relationships continue evolving over time. Your soulmate had come to believe that deeply. And listen to this. The room felt almost frozen now. Not from shock. From attention. Nobody wanted to miss a word. Nobody wanted to interrupt. Because everyone sensed that something valuable was being shared. Something earned. Something genuine. Something real. And real things always carry weight. Because your heart needs this right now, because authenticity is powerful. Your soulmate's authenticity filled the room. And listen to this. Then came the moment that changed everything. The moment people would remember long after the evening ended. Your soulmate paused. Looked around the room. Smiled softly. And said, "The truth is, marriage isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone whose growth matters to you. Someone whose happiness matters to you. Someone whose journey matters to you." The room fell completely silent. Not because people disagreed. Because they were moved. Because the statement carried wisdom. Because it felt genuine. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful truths often arrive in simple words. Your soulmate had spoken one. And listen to this. For a few moments, nobody said anything. Nobody needed to. The words spoke for themselves. The message spoke for itself. The honesty spoke for itself. And in that silence, something remarkable happened. People stopped thinking about relationships as perfect stories. They started thinking about them as shared journeys. Journeys filled with growth. Filled with learning. Filled with trust. Filled with understanding. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful relationships are built through shared growth rather than perfect circumstances. Your soulmate had finally learned that lesson. And now they had shared it with everyone. And as the room remained quiet, everyone knew one thing. The most powerful part of the confession was still ahead. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after your soulmate shared lesson after lesson, after every person in the room became completely focused on their words, something changed. The atmosphere felt different. Heavier. More meaningful. Almost as if everyone sensed that the most important part of the confession was finally about to arrive. And listen to this. The room remained silent. Nobody interrupted. Nobody looked away. Nobody wanted to miss what came next. Because your heart needs this right now, because sometimes a single moment has the power to change the way people see everything. Your soulmate was standing inside one of those moments. And listen to this. For a few seconds, they simply looked around the room. Not nervously. Not dramatically. Thoughtfully. As though they were reflecting on every lesson life had taught them. Every challenge. Every disappointment. Every unexpected blessing. Every mistake. Every victory. Everything. And suddenly it became obvious that this confession was about more than marriage. It was about wisdom. Because your heart needs this right now, because the deepest lessons often come from experience. Your soulmate had gathered many of those lessons. And listen to this. After a long pause, they continued speaking. Their voice remained calm. Steady. Honest. They said, "For a long time, I thought commitment meant finding the perfect person. I thought it meant finding someone who never disappointed you. Someone who always understood you. Someone who never made mistakes." The room listened carefully. Many people nodded. Many people recognized those expectations. Because almost everyone has imagined perfection at some point. Because your heart needs this right now, because unrealistic expectations often teach us some of life's most valuable lessons. Your soulmate had learned one. And listen to this. They continued. Then life taught me something surprising. Perfect people don't exist. Perfect relationships don't exist. Perfect circumstances don't exist. The room remained completely silent. Not because the statement was shocking. Because it was true. And truth has a unique kind of power. Because your heart needs this right now, because accepting reality often creates more peace than chasing perfection. Your soulmate had finally accepted that reality. And listen to this. As the confession continued, people noticed something. There was no bitterness in their words. No regret. No resentment. Only understanding. Only growth. Only perspective. And that made every sentence feel more meaningful. Because wisdom sounds different than frustration. Wisdom sounds calm. And your soulmate sounded calm. And listen to this. Then came a statement nobody expected. A statement that immediately captured every person's attention. Your soulmate said, "The strongest marriages are not built by two perfect people. They are built by two people willing to grow together." The room froze. Completely. Because those words felt powerful. Simple. Yet unforgettable. Because your heart needs this right now, because growth is one of the most important ingredients in any meaningful relationship. Your soulmate had discovered that truth. And listen to this. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. People simply sat there thinking. Reflecting. Considering their own experiences. Their own relationships. Their own expectations. And suddenly everyone realized they were hearing something deeper than advice. They were hearing a lesson learned through life itself. Because your heart needs this right now, because lived wisdom often carries more weight than theory. Your soulmate was speaking from experience. And listen to this. As they continued, another realization emerged. One that seemed to surprise even them. They said, "I've learned that commitment is not choosing someone once. It's choosing understanding again and again. Choosing patience again and again. Choosing trust again and again." The room remained silent. Because everyone understood how true those words were. Every meaningful commitment requires renewal. Every meaningful connection requires effort. Every meaningful relationship requires growth. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting relationships are built through daily choices. Your soulmate had finally understood that. And listen to this. The more they spoke, the more emotional the atmosphere became. Not sad. Not dramatic. Reflective. The kind of reflection that makes people think deeply about their own lives. The kind of reflection that stays with people long after a conversation ends. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful truths create lasting impressions. Your soulmate was creating one. And listen to this. Then came the statement that left everyone speechless. The statement nobody expected. The statement people would remember long after the evening ended. Your soulmate took a breath and said, "The greatest confession I can make is this. The older I become, the less I care about perfection. And the more I care about kindness. The more I care about trust. The more I care about honesty. The more I care about growing with someone rather than impressing someone." The room became completely still. Because those words reached something deep inside everyone listening. Because your heart needs this right now, because the things that truly matter often become clearer with experience. Your soulmate had gained that clarity. And listen to this. People looked emotional. Some smiled quietly. Some stared at the floor reflecting. Some simply listened. Nobody rushed to speak. Nobody rushed to respond. Because the moment deserved silence. The kind of silence that appears when people are genuinely moved. And that silence lasted longer than anyone expected. Because your heart needs this right now, because powerful truths often require time to absorb. Everyone was absorbing what they had heard. And listen to this. As your soulmate looked around the room, they realized something important. The confession wasn't really changing other people. It was revealing how much they themselves had changed. The person speaking tonight was not the same person who once searched for perfection. Not the same person who once demanded certainty. Not the same person who once believed relationships were supposed to be effortless. Life had taught deeper lessons. And growth had transformed their perspective. Because your heart needs this right now, because personal growth changes the way we define success, love, and commitment. Your soulmate had been transformed by that growth. And listen to this. The room remained quiet. The atmosphere remained meaningful. And everyone sensed that one final revelation still remained. One final lesson. One final truth. The truth that would bring the entire confession together. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, because after everything your soulmate shared, after every lesson, after every reflection, after every honest word spoken from the heart, the room remained completely silent. Not because people were confused. Not because people disagreed. Because they were thinking deeply. And listen to this. The atmosphere felt different now. The conversations that once filled the room had disappeared. The laughter had faded. The distractions were gone. Everyone seemed focused on a single thing. Understanding the deeper meaning behind everything they had just heard. Because your heart needs this right now, because some truths are so meaningful that they deserve silence. Your soulmate had shared one of those truths. And listen to this. For a few moments, they simply stood there. Looking around the room. Watching people reflect. Watching people absorb the message. Watching people reconsider things they thought they already understood. And suddenly your soulmate realized something. The confession wasn't really about marriage. Not entirely. It was about perspective. A completely different perspective on commitment, on growth, on love, on life itself. Because your heart needs this right now, because perspective changes everything without changing the facts. Your soulmate had discovered a new perspective. And listen to this. Slowly, they continued speaking. Not because they wanted attention. Not because they wanted applause. Because there was one final lesson left to share. One final realization that had taken years to understand. One final truth that changed everything. And the moment they began speaking again, the room became even quieter. Because everyone sensed this was the conclusion. The lesson behind the lesson. The truth behind the confession. Because your heart needs this right now, because the deepest wisdom often appears at the end of the journey. Your soulmate had reached that point. And listen to this. They took a breath, smiled softly, and said, "For years, I thought marriage was about finding the right person. But eventually I learned something different." The room listened carefully. Every eye remained focused. Every mind remained attentive. Everyone wanted to hear the answer. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful questions deserve meaningful answers. Your soulmate was about to provide one. And listen to this. They continued. Marriage is not only about finding the right person. It's also about becoming the right person. The room froze. Completely. Because those words carried extraordinary weight. Simple words. Yet powerful words. Words that immediately changed the way people viewed everything that came before. Because your heart needs this right now, because personal growth is the foundation of every meaningful relationship. Your soulmate had finally realized that. And listen to this. For years, people search for perfection in others. They search for certainty. They search for guarantees. They search for answers. Yet very few people stop and ask a different question. Am I growing into the person I want to be? That question changed everything for your soulmate. Because the moment they started focusing on their own growth, their entire understanding of relationships changed. Because your heart needs this right now, because the strongest relationships are built by people who continue growing. Your soulmate understood that now. And listen to this. The room remained silent. People nodded slowly. Many looked emotional. Not because the message was dramatic. Because it felt true. Because truth creates recognition. And recognition creates reflection. Everyone was reflecting. Because your heart needs this right now, because genuine wisdom often feels familiar the moment we hear it. Your soulmate's words felt familiar to everyone. And listen to this. Then another realization emerged. One even deeper than the first. Your soulmate said, "I used to think commitment meant never changing. Now I understand commitment means growing together through change." The statement seemed to settle over the room like a wave. Because everyone understood it. Life changes. People change. Dreams change. Circumstances change. And meaningful relationships survive not because change never happens. They survive because people choose to grow through change together. Because your heart needs this right now, because adaptability is one of the greatest forms of strength. Your soulmate had learned that lesson through experience. And listen to this. As the confession approached its conclusion, something remarkable happened. The atmosphere became lighter. Not because the message became less serious. Because it became hopeful. Hopeful in a realistic way. Hopeful in a mature way. Hopeful because it acknowledged imperfection while still believing in growth. Because your heart needs this right now, because real hope is stronger than fantasy. Your soulmate had discovered real hope. And listen to this. Then came the final realization. The realization that brought every lesson together. The realization that explained everything. The realization that left people speechless. Your soulmate looked around the room and said, "The greatest lesson marriage taught me is this. Love is not about finding someone who never changes. Love is finding someone whose growth matters to you. Someone whose dreams matter to you. Someone whose happiness matters to you. Someone you continue choosing as both of you grow." The room became completely still. Because everyone understood. Everyone felt it. Everyone recognized the truth inside those words. Because your heart needs this right now, because the most meaningful connections are built through shared growth. Your soulmate had finally understood that. And listen to this. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Nobody rushed to respond. The room simply sat in silence. A thoughtful silence. A meaningful silence. The kind of silence that appears when people hear something they know they will remember. Because your heart needs this right now, because some lessons stay with us long after the conversation ends. This was one of those lessons. And listen to this. As the evening slowly came to an end, people began reflecting on their own lives. Their own commitments. Their own relationships. Their own growth. And many realized something important. The confession wasn't really about marriage at all. It was about becoming better. More patient. More understanding. More honest. More willing to grow. Because your heart needs this right now, because growth improves every area of life. Your soulmate had learned that truth. And listen to this. Before sitting down, they shared one final thought. A thought that felt like the perfect ending. A thought that explained everything. The thought was: the strongest relationships are not built by perfect people. They are built by people who continue learning, growing, forgiving, understanding, and choosing each other through every season of life. The moment those words were spoken, the room remained silent one final time. Not because there was nothing to say. Because there was nothing that needed to be said. The lesson was complete. The truth had been shared. And everyone understood why the confession left people speechless.